Good evening and welcome to the news this FortWeek. In the past 14 days, a lot of stuff has gone down. Some people did some bad things, some people did some good things, and some people did some things that were neither here nor there. I've recently been told that it's not up to me to judge someone's worth in that kind of manner. Something about journalistic ethics, I never really did care for their music. Unfortunately, I do want to keep my job, and so with that in mind, we here at the news this FortWeek are bringing you this. Looking at the mainstream news outlets first this FortWeek, and a recent survey says that serious news stories are often too depressing to make fun of without risking turning your comedy show into something slightly political. When pressed to give further context to their response, the survey's sole answering body stated that the only real story they could do anything with recently had been on ghost towns, and that everybody knows that if you need to avoid one thing on the radio, it's dead air. The surveyed individual then went on to state that they were considering using the opening section of their show to introduce a politically satirical element in the same style as those, quote, well-famous people from the USA, but that they did not wish to alienate their listener base. The results of the initial survey, when released, simply stated that experimental data was required before a conclusion could be made. In completely unrelated news, and not at all linked to the aforementioned experiment, a North Korean envoy has stated that the country has developed nuclear missiles and that they are prepared to use them. Diplomatic experts later commented that the statement was partially mistranslated and that other context-giving clues had been omitted, revealing that the original message should have read correctly as North Korea has fabricated nuclear missiles and they are prepared to use them as a playground bullying tactic. The direct purpose of the missiles has been stated as being for retaliatory strikes against the United States of America should they ever launch a nuclear strike on North Korea, a statement which prompted diplomats from other nations to surround the two countries' representatives chanting "Fight, fight, 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 fight," before considering what they might be inciting and finally tattling to the United Nations after the recess bell had sounded. When asked to comment, the United States diplomatic representative indicated that they were too busy alternating between drinking from their juice box and kissing their own muscles to speak to us. Turning to entertainment news now, and popular global streaming service Netflix will be made available to Australian customers that haven't already figured out how to use a VPN later this week. Australian media experts warn that Netflix will see stiff competition from rival streaming services Stan, the quote, whitest sounding product in existence, and Presto, the Foxtel complement service that seemingly appeared from nowhere and which holds the Australian streaming rights to a number of shows that would otherwise have appeared on Netflix. In tangentially related news, Foxtel owner Rupert Murdoch has recently purchased 4 railroads, the electric company and the gasworks, and has been seen flaunting several get-out-of-jail-free cards. Still with entertainment news, and Bayside City socialite and philanthropist Pamela Kyle narrowly avoided trouble as an altercation broke out at her urban musician costume ball. The scuffle occurred when one guest, dressed as a famous rap artist, accused another of performing unethical business with a mutual enemy. When questioned, the assaulted attendee described her assailant's behaviour as ludicrous, though other guests agreed he was more like Biggie Smalls. Next up, it's time to take a look at the radio classifieds, allowing you to appear as though you have a social life. The Bayside City Dog Lovers Association held their annual dog show over the weekend, with a number of new categories being included in this year's festivities. Special mentions go out to Melon the Collie, who won Most Depressing Entrant, and Seal, who won Best Canine Fursuit and later went on to perform Kiss from a Rose. The event also had its very first all-dog petting zoo, however due to budgetary constraints it only featured a single animal. Attendees report that it was a Shih Tzu. Peter Pollenmerry wishes to announce a price drop in his miniature Fabergé statues of Bambi. Mr. Pollenmerry states in his advertisement that even though the statues are gold-plated and encrusted with precious stones, many customers thought that they were still just a little dear. And lastly, the Bayside City Mafia wishes to invite members of the public touched by the works of Johnny Twinkletoes Falcone to his funeral. The service is currently scheduled for next Saturday, and although Johnny is out of town on business right now, they're hoping to keep this a surprise from him, so tight lips are a must. Now it's time for our word of the FortWeek, the section where, due to the fact that we ran out of new words sometime last year, we show you how to reuse old words for new purposes. This week's word is depend, a word that most people know to mean being able to rely on or trust something, but which has now taken on the additional meaning of any end of a body of water that isn't shallow. And finally, I leave you with this fortnight's FortWeekly challenge, a special type of radio quiz that exists purely to make me feel better about myself in ways you can't even imagine. This week's challenge comes from Irish exchange student Ivan O'Clue, who asks, I have 12 tales, but only a third are oft seen. I have countless words, but say very little. I turned the lion into a lamb. What am I? A classic riddle that I'm sure many of you already know the answer to, so just to keep things lively, the answer that I consider the most inventive will win this week's prize of an evening alone with the incredibly talented star of Juno, Ellen Page's less famous young brother Edward Page's much less appealing friend, Claude. This concludes the news this FortWeek for now. Join us again next FortWeek for less of nothing we didn't do tonight, and more of the things that we did.